Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we got a three-game slate for college football here. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel quite a bit. So with that said, let's get into it. So at quarterbacks, we have three guys to take a look at today. Curtis Rourke for Ohio is my top play overall. He does have tendency to get 300 plus yards. He's going to have the most yards upside on this particular slate. His team is also expected to be in a pretty tight game, so it's definitely going to be a game that both teams are probably going to score around 25, 30 points in. The only team that's really better is Toledo. So with that said, I think he's a good play here. He does rush some too, which actually has some added bonus because he gets like 30 or so yards a game, and sometimes gets a touchdown that way. So I think he's a really good play on this particular slate. Then we're gonna look at Brett Gabbert for Miami of Ohio. Now he's only played in 3 games this season, and they've been kind of difficult games. So he is a little bit risky, but because he was hurt and he's been playing hurt. But he does have some upside in this matchup. Miami, Ohio against Ohio. It should be a pretty tight game. So I expect both quarterbacks to do pretty decently, though he is the underdog in this particular one. Then we're going to look at Taylor Powell for EMU. Now they actually have the most points on the board today, and he doesn't quite have the upside of some of the other work because he doesn't throw the ball quite as much. But I think he's a pretty good option on this slate in this matchup against Akron, and I think he will have the potential to get a couple touchdowns. And he does occasionally run the ball, but unfortunately he doesn't typically get very many yards. As you can see, he's got negative yards in a lot of cases. But if he can get some good throws off, he's going to be a decent option and a good either secondary option for the S flex or even just a secondary option to go off of work at the main quarterback spot. In the running back situation, we're going to start with Price for Akron. Now he's very low priced, and he's not going to get a ton of runs, but he does some upsides at this price and in this matchup here. Now Akron isn't favored to win, but they are one of the teams that they are the team that has the most points potential of the underdogs on the slate. So I do think that they're interesting, and that game has got the highest upside. Obviously, he doesn't get a ton of rushes, but he does have a tendency to get a touchdown occasionally. So I look for him to have some potential to get 10 to 15 fantasy points in this one, which is quite enough at that price point. Jacquees Stewart for Toledo is another guy I like here. He should be the starter, and he should get some upside at this price with being the starter. But he doesn't always do great, so he is a little bit risky as well. Obviously, he's super cheap, so that helps, offset some of the risk. But if you need to save money here, then he's one guy you could take a look at as well if you want to come off a price as another option. And Toledo is one of the teams that is expected to win by the most points. They're a 11-point favorite over Ball State, so they have the highest in that regard. So he should get some opportunity in this game. Then we're going to look at Samson Evans for Eastern Michigan. Now he's going to get more rush yards, more carries than most of the guys on the slate, getting about 20 to 25 probably. He's had a couple games where he hasn't, but for the most part he has a lot of upside in these types of matchups. And this is a good matchup for him against Akron, and so I expect him, who's not good defensively, I expect him to do pretty well. Then we're going to look at Carson Steele for Ball State. Now he's the underdog team, but he does get a lot of rushes. He's gonna have some. It's a very tough matchup for him though, so you do have to take that into consideration. But he does get a lot of attempts, and if he can utilize those attempts effectively, he will get a touchdown hopefully in the game, which would help him pay off here. And then we're gonna look at C. Bangura for Ohio. Another guy for Ohio that's looking pretty good today. He doesn't get as many touches as Steele does, but I think he has more upside in this matchup because of the quality of the matchup, and I expect him to probably outscore Steele to some degree, but I still think both players are decent options on the slate. Then we're going to look at, let's see here, wide receivers. First, we're going to take a look at Shockey Jacqui. I don't know how to say your last name, sorry. But for Akron, now he's pretty inexpensive, and he's getting 7 to 15 targets a game, which is pretty great. He's a little bit inconsistent with the catches, but he has 100-yard potential, and he's been pretty consistent at scoring over 10 fantasy points in each game. And for his price point, it's just way too cheap. I'm shocked that his price point is so low, quite frankly. Then we're going to look at Mac Hippenhammer. Now, he has had to deal with multiple quarterbacks this season, but in the first game of the year and in the last 2 games, he's been okay with Brett Gabbert, and so I expect him to have a good game here in this matchup where both teams should score pretty well. Then we're going to look at Alex Adams for Akron. He's another guy for Akron that I like. He also gets quite a few targets. These two guys get the most targets for their team. Now, he's been inconsistent, but the last 2 weeks he's been dominating, and he's had some touchdowns and stuff, and so I really do like him here in this matchup. Another guy, this is too cheap for the potential of the game. Even though they're not favored to win, they're still, they're only 7-point underdogs, so it's not like it's blowout likely or something like that. Then we're going to look at Jay Sean Jackson from Ball State. Now, he's not as ideal as some of the other options, but he is getting a lot of targets. It's just a matter of pulling enough of them in to pay off fantasy-wise. And his price point is okay for that. And then Sam Wigluce for Ohio. He looks like he's in a really good spot here. He has 7 touchdowns the last 5 games, including 3 games with 2 touchdowns each. I really do like him here, and I think he's got a lot of upside in this matchup that should be tight, and he should have a lot of opportunity in. So with that said, that's what I got for the slate. I think it's a pretty solid little slate. Obviously, I recommend putting a wide receiver or running back in the flex spot, which is pretty much all you can do. Probably more likely a wide receiver, to be honest, with the quality this slate. And then I do recommend putting one of the quarterbacks in the S-Flex as well. So with that said, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.